Bernie Sanders, the socialist turned Democrat, senator from Vermont, stunned the political world this year by running a very competitive race with Hillary Clinton for the Democratic presidential nomination. He received more than 12 million votes in the primaries and caucuses. She got 3.7 million more and will be officially nominated in Philadelphia in less than 3 weeks. But big questions remain for the challenger. Will he endorse Clinton? How enthusiastically? What are the important elements in the Democratic platform and any rules changes? And how or whether his candidacy has changed the party? We are pleased to welcome Senator Sanders with us tonight. Thank you, Senator.
Great to be with you.
Let's start off with the question everyone's asking. When are you going to endorse Hillary?
Well, our campaigns are working together. As you know, from day one, I said I would endorse the winner of the Democratic primary. I had hoped it would be me. It appears that it will not be, and that endorsement will come. And we're just working.
There are reports that it could come as early as next Tuesday, or maybe in New Hampshire. Is that likely?
We are working together to see how we can be most effective in terms of coming together on issues and in running the kind of campaign that needs to be run to make sure that Donald Trump does not become president.
Are there any other questions that have to be resolved in the platform or anything else before you endorse it?
We're working together, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to be united and do everything we can to make sure that Donald Trump does not become president.
Final question on that. Will you endorse her before the Republican primary begins?
Well, right now, we are working to make sure that we can be most effective in making sure that somebody who would be a disaster for this country, Mr. Donald Trump, does not become president.
Can I get it out of you before the Republican
No, it's not. That's not what the important issue is. The important issue is how we work together, how we rally the American people, how we address the major crises that we face, and how we go on to transform America.
Well, when you do this, let me ask how active and how enthusiastic you'll be. You know, a number of your supporters are talking now about voting for third-party candidates, Jill Stein, the Green Party, or even Gary Johnson, the Libertarian. What are you going to say to them?
Well, what I'm going to say to them is this country faces enormous crises. I don't honestly know how we would survive 4 years of a Donald Trump, how we would survive a person who is trying to divide us up, who is running his campaign on bigotry, who doesn't even recognize the reality of climate change, who wants to give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 0.2%, who every single day seems to be insulting another group, whether it is Mexicans or Muslims or women or African Americans. In the world that we're living in today, I just don't know how we go 4 years with somebody like Trump.
So a vote for Stein or Johnson would be?
Well, look, you're talking to somebody who is the longest serving independent in the history of the United States Congress, and I understand where people are coming from. My own view right now is that we have got to do everything that we can to defeat Donald Trump and elect Hillary Clinton.
Let's talk about some of the issues. You were pleased with her college affordability plan, that she moved closer to your position on that. What are some of the other things you'd like to see her move on before the platform is finalized?
Well, it's not a question of her moving. It's a question of the Democratic Party and Secretary Clinton addressing the major crises that we face.
What are some of the other crises?
Well, let's just, one of the issues that we have to talk about as a nation is focus on the real issues. Mm-hmm. What are the real issues? For 40 years, the middle class of this country has been disappearing. How are you going to address that? We have grotesque levels of income and wealth inequality. Do you think that it's appropriate that the top 20 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom 50%? That the top 1/10 of 1% now owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%? Are we allowed to talk about that?
Are you satisfied the platform is dealing with that now?
We are. This is the most progressive platform in the history of the Democratic Party.
So what else has to be in the platform?
What has to be in the platform right now, we have made real progress. I want to see very specific language about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I believe that in this country, people who work 40 hours a week should not be living in poverty.
They call for it now on the platform.
No, they don't. It's kind of nuanced.
So it has to go further.
Yeah, it has to be clear. Second of all, I think we need to make sure that the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is, in my view, a continuation of disastrous trade policies in the past, which have cost us millions of decent-paying jobs, have led to a race to the bottom. I think we should be very clear in saying that should not come up in the lame duck session.
Senator Sanders, that would be a direct slap at Barack Obama, who is the most popular figure and the most popular Democrat in the party right now. I mean, I know you're opposed to it. Opposing it is not a slap, but saying, I'm sorry, Mr. President, you can't bring that up in a lame duck.
I had the impression that we lived in a democratic society, and I had the impression that the overwhelming majority of Democrats in the House and, in fact, in the Senate are opposed to the TPP. I'm a great fan of Barack Obama, so I respect him. He's a personal friend. I like him.
Right.
But you know what? He's not right all of the time. I'm not right all the time. You're not right all the time. And what a democracy is about is the willingness to disagree.
Do you think the Clinton people will agree to putting a plank in that says no TPP in the lame duck from your conversations?
Well, you'll have to ask the Clinton people. We are working as hard as we can to make that happen. You know, when we ask ourselves why the middle class is in decline, why almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%, there are a lot of reasons. But one of those reasons is a disastrous trade policy which has forced American workers to compete against people around the world who make pennies an hour. And by the way, when you see people angry and feeling powerless and not hearing the government respond to their needs, you know what? You have an investor-state dispute system in the TPP, which says, among other things, that companies like TransCanada, who are pushing the Keystone Pipeline, which was appropriately rejected by the president, they can go to a third-party tribunal and ask for billions of dollars from the United States government. You're lessening democracy as a result of this TPP.
Senator, in the draft so far, a ban on fracking and a call for a carbon tax, neither one is in the draft so far. Do you expect them, or will you insist they be in the final?
We're going to fight for that, and I'll tell you why, Al.
What do you think of the odds of getting that?
Well, you see, asking what the odds are, that's a media question.
Well, no, it is.
Ask me about should we have it.
Okay.
And the answer is I happen to believe that climate change is an extraordinary crisis facing this planet. And I believe that if we continue to allow the fossil fuel industry to go their merry way, the planet that your grandchildren will inherit may not be a particularly habitable planet. So I think we have got to move aggressively in every way that we can. And I think we need a tax on carbon. We need to end fracking today. Now, I understand.
I'm not trying to give you a trick question or a media question. What I'm trying to find out is how important are those provisions for you to be an enthusiastic campaigner in the fall?
They are important for my grandchildren and your grandchildren and billions of people on this planet. That's what they are important for. Though this is not a political issue.
Right.
It happens to be Donald Trump happens to believe that climate change is a hoax. I think Donald Trump is out of his mind, because the entire scientific community believes that climate change is real, and what they have told us is they have underestimated the crisis that we face. So I'm going to try to be as aggressive as I can on this issue, not for political reasons, not to embarrass anybody, but to make it clear that the United States has got to lead the world. China, India, Russia have got to follow us. But we're fighting for the future of this planet.
One of the centerpiece of your campaign, one of the centerpieces was campaign finance reform, the rigged system, as you called it, corrupt, big money.
As I called it? Yeah, as I called it.
You did.
As a fact.
Yes. And Hillary Clinton has said, yeah, she agrees, she's going to do something. You know, I remember Bill Clinton said that in 1993 and 1992, and nothing happened. Barack Obama said that in 2008, and nothing happened. Presidents seem to give lip service to that, but then it just becomes too tough.
No, I don't think that's quite fair.
Okay. I'm not saying that they changed position. It just didn't become a priority.
We can't, in this case, cast equal blame. You got a Republican Party whose leader, Mitch McConnell. You know what Mitch thinks? Mitch thinks that Citizens United did not go far enough. Mitch thinks that we should allow the Koch brothers and billionaires to literally employ candidates. You want to run for United States Senate? The Koch brothers will give you directly a check for a few $100 million. That's McConnell's view. So that is not the president's view. Right. It's not Hillary Clinton's view. Okay? So you may argue that maybe Democrats have been as strong as they should have been, but on this one, all of the blame rests with Republicans who love the idea that the Koch brothers and other billionaires can finance their campaigns. In my view, we've got to overturn this disastrous Citizens United. We've got to go further and move to public funding of elections. Right now, let me be very clear. This country is moving toward an oligarchic form of society where you have a handful of billionaire families controlling our economic and political life. By the way, in terms of the United States Senate right now, Koch brothers are pouring tens of millions of dollars trying to gain control of the U.S. Senate. Is that appropriate? I think not.
Senator, much of what we're talking about is what goes in the party platform. Barney Frank, former member of Congress, said the other day that platforms are the miscongeniality of beauty contests. They really are irrelevant.
Well, I strongly disagree with
You do.
this. They become the blueprint for the future. I'm not saying that tomorrow every plank in the platform becomes converted into legislation, but it is the basis upon which the party stands. And one of the other things that I am going to fight for is, in fact, to make that platform a more relevant document and, in fact, demand that the party move forward based on what is in the
What's in
platform.
the platform. So therefore, not just adopt the platform, but say this is the mandate for the Congress.
Exactly.
You also are talking about rules changes. You'd like to see in 2020 independents be allowed to vote in all the primaries. Do you think that, from what your conversations, do you think that's going to happen? And
There are differences of opinion, but I think we can win this one because on the surface, if you go to a state like New York State,
right.
3 million people in New York State who declared themselves as independents could not participate in either the Democratic or Republican primary, could not play a role in selecting who the candidate would be to run for president. I think that's on the surface pretty stupid.
And how about the idea of ending caucuses too? Because the point is to have more participation. You did well in caucuses, but should we get away?
I think we should take a look at caucuses. And this, what I like about caucuses, Al, is that it demands more of people. I believe in democracy. I want to see people yelling and screaming and arguing about the important issues facing America. I want to see the media start focusing on the real issues facing America rather than personalities and conflicts all the time. So I like the idea that people have to spend a couple of hours at a caucus and talking and arguing with their neighbors. On the other hand, what I recognize is if the caucus is at 7 o'clock in the evening, you know what? You may be working, you may be babysitting.
You're on the night shift. You can't
You're on the night shift, you can't come out. So I think a reasonable compromise is what you call a firehouse caucus. And that is you can come in anytime during the day, cast your ballot. But if you want to stay for a more prolonged debate and discussion, you can do that as
And
well.
if you did that and allowed independents to vote in primaries, you'd be in 2020, you'd be pleased.
Yeah, I think that's a step forward.
Let me turn. A number of Sanders supporters on social media and elsewhere have started a campaign that says that in picking Hillary Clinton's running mate, Tim Kaine would be unacceptable, that he's a tool of Wall Street. Does that reflect your view?
I know Tim, and Tim is a very decent guy. I happen to believe that we should have as our vice presidential nominee a very strong progressive voice, somebody who has a history of standing up to big money interests, somebody who is going to fight for the working families of this country and who has a history of doing that.
Does Tim Kaine meet that test?
I don't want to comment on Tim Kaine.
No, but I'm asking you because these people are representing themselves as Sanders people, and they say,
well, we have 13 million Sanders
I know you are, but
people, and all of them have a different opinion. I know Tim, he's a very decent guy. I'm not going to get involved in that. All I will tell you is what I have learned, Al, is that there's a lot of anger and frustration out there. People feel that Washington does not listen to them. They're working longer hours for lower wages. They're worried about their kids' future, whether their kids can afford to go to college. They're worried about child care. They want a government which responds to them, not wealthy campaign contributors. So my suggestion is let's have somebody who is a real fighter for the middle class and working families as vice president.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I promise I'm not. But in asking the question, one comes away with the impression that you don't think Tim Kaine, as much as you may like him, quite meets that test.
But you see, this is, in all due respect, this is media stuff. Yes, it's media stuff.
All right, let me ask this. Does Elizabeth Warren meet that test?
Elizabeth Warren is one of the outstanding members of the United States Senate. She has a life history of standing up to powerful special
You'd be
interests.
pleased if she were picked?
I would be pleased.
Okay. You know, there are some Democrats. Let me ask you this. Did Hillary Clinton win this nomination fair and square?
Well, let me answer it in this way. We knew what the rules were when we went in. We knew that in New York State, 3 million people who were independents were not allowed to vote, and that there were many closed primaries along the way. I was, given, so we knew what we were getting into. I think the rules in many cases are absurd, but we knew what we were getting into, of course.
So in that sense, you won a fair and square.
She got more votes than I did, yes.
Am I right in saying what you're saying is if it had been different rules, who knows what the outcome would have been? Let me, if the James Comey report on her use of a private email server, but it had come out 2 months earlier, might that have changed the outcome?
I have no idea. You know, Al, I got to get back to the reason that I ran for president.
Yeah.
You see, what media does is spend a lot of time talking about Hillary Clinton, or Donald Trump for that matter, or Bernie Sanders. But you know what the American people want? This is a lesson that I learned. They want to know why their jobs went to China. That's what they would like to talk about. They want to know why the Koch brothers can spend tens of millions of dollars in a so-called democratic society to elect the United States Senate. They want to know about the morality of so few having so much and us having the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And what I find myself in terms of media is having to keep talking about the issues and not getting involved in Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. Let's talk about the issues facing the American people. And if you do that, which candidate is better able to respond to those crises? And I think Hillary Clinton is very
The
clearly.
reason I raise that is because the American people also care about trust. They surely care about the issues that you're talking about. And this seems to go to the question of trust. Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, said yesterday that Hillary Clinton should not be able to get security briefings.
Did he? Well, I am really shocked that Paul would really say that. And let me make this wild guess that tomorrow the Republicans will say everything else. And let me make another wild guess that they will try to make this the major issue of the campaign. But let me also make a guess that media will not talk about the agenda of the Republican Party, which is to give huge tax breaks to billionaires, that they reject the science on climate change, that they want to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. What do you think, Al? Is that a good guess?
You know, Senator, you know, you're a good guesser on these things. But what I think you're saying is that this is not a relevant issue.
No, I did not say it was not a relevant issue.
Right.
It is a relevant issue. And Donald Trump's business background is a relevant issue. I don't mean to suggest that these are not serious issues. But what are more serious issues is the disappearance of the middle class of this country. I have been around the country. I have gone to Native American Indian reservations where the life expectancy is of a third world country. I've been in areas where when people turn on the drinking water, the water cannot be consumed because it is full of pesticides. I have seen people working incredibly long hours and not making enough money to take care of their families. I've seen kids whose dreams were to go to college not being able to go to college. Old people trying to live, seniors trying to live on $10,000 a year Social Security. How often do we talk about that, Al?
We talked about that some today.
Not a whole lot.
Not, but some.
What, 1% of Hillary's emails?
But all right, but wait, just to wrap that up, what you're saying is yes, it's a serious issue, but you don't agree with Paul Ryan. She should be denied security.
That's correct. I do not agree.
Let me ask about young voters for whom you had great appeal. You
think it's my youthful charm that did that?
I think it was. I think you and that charisma. No, I give all the credit to your wife.
That may be right.
Donald Trump says, and I'm quoting Donald Trump now, these are talking about issues. He says, you know, in a lot of the issues that the young people were attracted to Bernie on, the system is corrupt, the system is rigged, corporations have too much power, trade deals are bad. I'm closer to Bernie than Hillary Clinton.
Let me say, and it doesn't give me pleasure to say this, because I have many conservative friends who I like and respect, who are honest people who believe what they believe. But I have to say that Donald Trump is a pathological liar. And I think that's just not me saying it. I mean, many Republicans will say the same thing. That he says things which are just blatantly not true. No, politicians are all known, all of us, to stretch things a little bit, no doubt. He lies all of the time. So I think whatever he says should be, if he tells you it's sunny outside, take a hard look to see whether the sun is shining. Mm-hmm. He just does not tell the truth. I think what he is trying to do is, in a very opportunistic way, try to win votes that may have come to me. But I don't think he will be successful in that regard.
And young voters should not listen to that.
Look, what young voters want, I think, here's where I think a lot of the young people are. First of all, by definition, young people are idealistic. They understand that this country can be so much more than it is right now. And they're looking out there, and they're worried about climate change, and they're worried about criminal justice and racism and sexism. And you know what else they're worried about now? For the first time in the modern history of this country, unless we change it, they're going to have a lower standard of living than my generation. We're moving in the wrong direction, and they don't accept that. They are tired of leaving school $50,000, $60,000 in debt and not being able to get married or have kids. So I don't think that the young people will fall for Donald Trump, because one thing about the young people today, which is a beautiful thing, is they reject in a very strong way bigotry and sexism and racism and homophobia.
It's clear that you did not come away from this campaign with an especially high regard for the media.
Yes.
Just elaborate on why. What do you think of the media?
But you have to be, it's not a personal thing. I
No,
don't
I
think
know it's
anyone
not.
has picked
I'm
on
not-
Bernie Sanders.
Right.
It's because even some of the questions we've discussed today, this campaign is not about Hillary Clinton. It is not about Donald Trump. It is not about Bernie Sanders. It is about the American people. And you tell me, you're a media guy, how much time do we really talk about the decline of the middle class? Should we be talking about, as a nation, the morality of so few having so much and so many having so little? Do we talk about it at all? Do we talk about the pharmaceutical industry making top 5 companies making $50 billion in profits last year while charging the American people the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? And is it possible that we don't talk about it because of the ads that we see going to the TV industry? What do you think? Am I right or am I wrong?
And well, I'm not going to speak for the entire industry, but also it's not just the ads. You're saying that the broadcast and print outlets
are owned by multinational corporations who clearly have a bias.
Senator, as you reflect back on this campaign, I know it's hard to do because it's just ending right now. But what are your good thoughts, and do you have regrets?
Well, a lot of beautiful thoughts, and I'll tell you what the most beautiful thought of all is, that I am optimistic about the future of this country, because I have spoken to so many people, working people, young people, who really, really want to change this country for the better. I've seen their eyes of hope, a willingness to stand up and fight, and that is what has inspired me, and will continue to inspire me. So politically, what we have got to do is take that energy of those young people who now in many instances do not feel welcome into the political process, to figure out ways where they can be involved and help transform this country.
Any regrets?
Well, look, as you think back, you could always have done things differently, and we certainly could have, but I think it is fair to say that we did a lot better than most people anticipated that we would, that we ran a great campaign, had a great staff. So no, I would say it's been an extraordinary experience. And I just want to thank so many millions of people who have been responsive and supportive. And the political revolution continues. We're not giving up.
And finally, tough to return to the Senate?
Yeah, that is an understatement. Yes.
On that note, we will end. Senator Sanders, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll be back in just a moment.